Okay, ji, let us begin. Today we will discuss about the structured programming, and today is our second lesson on the structured programming. And in the last lesson, we discussed various basic things related to it, and we talked about the subroutines, and then the types of the subroutines, then the values that we pass to the subroutines, and then the parameters and then the values. So you can see my last video in which we have seen the things in much detail. Today we will further carry forward the topic, and we'll talk about it. And today, first of all, we'll start with the values that we are passing. In the last lesson, although I have given the introduction of passing values, which are called parameters, and we also have seen that these parameters, there are two types of parameters. One is the sender parameter, and the other is the receiver parameter. The sender is called the actual parameter, and the receiver is called the formal parameter. And then there is one more thing associated with the parameter, is that when we are passing the values from the calling function to the main function, the body of the function, the values, they are either passed by reference or they are passed by value. So we'll see these things in our today's lesson. So let's begin. So we'll be talking about the parameters. And as I told you that the parameter, they first of all the types, and the types include first of all the sender, and the other one is the receiver. The sender is called this is the and the receiver is called the form. And you know what is the parameter? You already remember the parameter. Parameters are the passing values. The passing values, the variables, the data which we pass to the calling function. Okay. Okay, now so when we are passing these values, the value which we pass, that is the passing value is the sender, and the receiving value is the, like when we say that average in the main function, let's say sub main, we call average. For example, average is the procedure that we are calling, and we give two values, for example 3 and 9, and this is end sub. So the place where it will be called, now this, the value here we are passing 3 and 9. This is the value which we are passing. This is the sender value. This is the actual value. And in the definition of this subroutine, that is the now for example, sub is the word we use in the VB, and in the pseudocode we write it as procedure. So I will write procedure over here, because we will not be writing coding in the AS. So this is procedure main, so this is the end procedure. Sorry. So the calling function, calling procedure is average, so we'll call procedure average, and we have here the variable for 3 and 9. These are the values we passed. So here we will have, for example, n1 as integer, n2 as integer. So the values will be received by it, and when it will be called, we output it. And how we output? n1 plus n2 divided by 2. And procedure. Now here you can see the function, the procedure is called, average is called over here. So this is the average we called. This is the calling sender. This is the sender, and here it is received by n1 and n2. So this is the receiver. This is the forward. So 3 and 9 and n1 and n2, these are the parameters, and they are passed from the main, and they are received in the definition, in the body of its of the procedure. Okay, so one is sender and the other one is, this is the sender and this is the receiver. So one is the sender and the other one is the receiver. This is 1 and this is the 2. Okay, so this point should be very, very clear about the types and the type based on when we are passing values, while passing values, how we pass the value. One is the sender and the other one is the receiver. Now the other thing, that is that when we pass these values, the second important thing is that these are the types. Now how we can pass it? This next very important thing is the passing values type and then the passing values itself. The second important discussion of the parameter, again we come toward the parameters. So in the parameter, the second is that we pass the values either by value or by reference. So there are two methods through which we can pass the values, like the way you have seen in the last, that the values they are passed when in the main these values are called sender and in the body or in the definition these are called receiver, but either it is sender or it is receiver. When the values they will be passed in two different ways. One is the by val and second is the by reference. One method is by val and the second method is reference, by reference. Now for example, the values we have just seen, I'll give you an example. For example, I will explain it further. We have the main, this is the main function, okay, and this is the average, okay. All right, this is like here we have we take value a is equal to 4, b is equal to 5, and here we call this is sub b. This is subroutine B. And this is, for example, sub A. Okay. One is the subroutine A and the other one is subroutine B. From the subroutine A, we are passing the values like we in the subroutine A we call subroutine B. We are calling it, just a second, give me a little gap over here so that there must be no confusion. Sub A, there's a gap between it. One is sub A and the other one is sub B. So we are calling the let's say B over here, and we pass A and B to it. From the subroutine A, we call the subroutine B, and we are passing A and B two values to it. Okay. Now I will explain. First of all, this A and B, we have just seen this A and B over here is, what is it? This is the actual, which means it is the sender. So this A and B will be given to the subroutine B, and the subroutine B will get this over here. For example, here we have for A and B we have N and M. Okay. So when we give N and M, it has N and it has M. So the values of A and B, which is 4 and 5, which in the subroutine A was assigned 4 and B was assigned 5, and then the A and B was passed to the subroutine B inside the subroutine A. So it means the values 4 and 5, they are passed to subroutine 4 and 5. These two values are passed to subroutine B. Now when we pass 4 and 5 to subroutine B, now as I said, now let's see inside the memory. We'll understand what it means by val and what it means by reference. Okay. So when we are passing A and B to subroutine B, one method is that N and M will get 4 and 5. Okay. In the sub B, it received 4 and 5. And 4 and 5. Now in order to understand that how this 4 and 5 will be referred in the memory, we'll also draw the memory part over here. Now in the memory, let's say when we say A and in the memory, what happened? There's a box A, there's a box B. So 4 and 5. When we declare A and B and we assign 4 and 5, now inside this is the main memory. Inside the memory, a space is reserved with the name A and a space is reserved with the name B. And this 4 and 5 is assigned to it. Okay. So when we pass the value, now number one is by val. When we are passing the value by val means inside the memory, a copy of the values A and B will be passed. So N and M will receive another space will be created, and this is when we are talking about by val. In by val, there is a separate space created in the memory, and then the value 4 and 5 is assigned to it. Means the duplicate of 4 and 5 is assigned, is given to the calling function, to the subroutine B. Now N and M will have a different space in the memory to hold the received value 4 and 5. Okay. So now if you change 4 and 5 in the subroutine B, nothing will happen to the location A and B. This is when we call it as by val. I hope I have made it clear that what is when we are doing with by val. Now what happens when we pass the value by reference? The second thing, when we pass the value by reference like A and B, inside the memory no new space will be created. Rather, the same space, that is A and B, will be declared as N and M. So the N and M in the subroutine B will be referring to the original location of, or the original the place of the variable of the values 4 and 5, which is A and B. So if any change comes in the N and M in the subroutine B, it will also affect the A and B. This is by reference. So this is the difference, that by reference it means N and M will become A and B. A and B. This is by reference. Okay. So this is how the original value is passed in the by reference. So these two concepts are very clear, very important, and when we are dealing with the functions and procedures, because when we are passing the values by val, the duplicate of the values, they are passed, and when we are passing the values by reference, the original location or the original value is passed. Okay. Now let us see one question from the past paper that will make this concept more clear. I have my topical already opened over here. So on the page number, I think 55, we have the question in the past paper. Yes. Now see, this is one question that make the same discussion very clear. If you see this question, procedure, my procedure, and x is equal to x plus 1, and procedure. And then x is equal to 4, call my procedure x, output x. Now this is, these are the lines of the code. Parameter x is passed. Now the point to focus is that parameter x is passed to pass data to the procedure my procedure. X is the parameter we are passing to the my procedure. There are two parameter passing methods that could be used. Now we have to write the name. One procedure method is name of the parameter passing method. One is by value. Okay. And when we pass it by val, complete the following table for each of the two methods. When we pass it by val, now let's see x we passed, and x is 4, and when we pass here, you see x is 4, and when we are passing x to 4, my procedure x, so 4 is passed over here, so 4 is received by x, so x is equal to x plus 1, so this become 4 plus 1, so this become 5. Okay. So this is the calling procedure, This is the job of the calling procedure, that it is adding 1 into it. And in the next line, when we output x, this x is now referring to this x, because it is not going to the other x, because the copy of the value was passed to it. So what value we will have here, when the value will be passed by the method of by val, this output will print 4 over here. And the reason is that the value is passed by the method of by val by value, in which the duplicate of the variable x is passed. Okay. Now in the second method is by reference. And when we pass it by reference, what happens? क्या होगा आप देखें कि when we pass the value by reference, passing it by reference, now 4 is passed to it, x, so x 4 received here, and here 4 plus 1 is 5. Now x, the value of the 4 is, the value of the 4 is now changed. 4 plus 1 is equal to 5 here. Now x become 5, and as this x was passed here by reference, so when we add 1 into it, the original x value will also change. This also will become 5. So when we output x, it will output 5. So here we'll write 5. And the description explanation is, the value is passed by the method of by reference, in which the original value is affected by adding 1 into it in procedure definition. Okay? So this is the concept of calling value and changing and doing the effects. So this is about the procedure and parameter passing method, and by val and by reference. This is one very important concept that you people have to apply in your procedures and structured programming concept.